All right, so House Democrats have ousted their former leader Eileen Fillercorn and brought in a new leader, Delegate Don Scott, who will now lead the House minority. Jeff Shapiro, what the heck is happening with the House Democratic Caucus?
Well, remember when Filicorn was brought low several weeks ago in this coup executed by Don Scott, it wasn't clear that Scott had the votes to succeed her as the new Democratic leader. Well, he did, and he prevailed in a three-way race, defeating two Northern Virginians, Charnel Herring, a former majority leader and caucus chair, and Rip Sullivan. What we are seeing is a more combative approach by that new Democratic minority in the House of Delegates, in particular with this new Republican governor. And Scott and Youngkin already have history. Remember, it was Scott who gave that barn burner of a speech back during the winter session of the legislature, in which he called out Youngkin for his appeals to race, his seeming preoccupation with the culture wars and the public schools and in higher education. Remember, that so rattled Youngkin that he showed up essentially uninvited at Scott's office in the General Assembly building, the interim General Assembly building, hoping to sort of talk things through with Scott. So the initial response to this by Republicans has been pushed back as well. I mean, all one has to do is stray into social media and see a lot of the very tart things that the Republican Party of Virginia in particular has been pointing out and pushing out about Don Scott, that he's another, urban liberal out of touch with Virginians, and all sorts of suggestions that because he had a criminal record, losing his law license, it was restored, that maybe he's not the sterling model that a legislative leader should be.
Well, lawmakers ended the General Assembly session without passing a budget back in March. The House and Senate budget leaders have been negotiating in secret behind closed doors and crafted a deal that lawmakers have now put the stamp of approval on. Jeff Shapiro, what's in this budget deal?
Well, remember, it took almost 6 months to get this budget done. We're talking about amendments to the budget that will lapse at the end of June. And then we're talking about a brand new budget, 2 years, $165 billion, a big one for sure. We've got about $4 billion in tax cuts, not as generous as Governor Youngkin would like. 10% raises for state employees who are at odds with Youngkin over his back to the office order. And following the mass shooting, that terrible mass shooting in Texas at a public school, we're seeing more money in this budget for cops in schools. It's the fine print also that makes this budget so interesting. We're seeing recriminalization of weed. If you're carrying more than 4 ounces and less than a pound, that's a misdemeanor. There's a delay, according to Greens, on the ban on styrofoam for at least 5 years. And then a delay in that do-over referendum for a casino in Richmond. That could also affect licensing. Should the casino be approved, if it actually gets back on the ballot following a study by the investigative arm of the General Assembly?
So we're not done with the budget yet. The General Assembly will send it to the governor. The governor has about a week to make amendments, and then lawmakers have to reconvene and put the final touches on this. Jeff Shapiro, what's next for this budget?
Well, one of the things that this governor is going to be looking at is a lot of this fine print, some of it which he can veto, some of which he can amend. It all depends on how it's constructed. The governor is trying to sound somewhat charitable about the budget that's been sent to him. For example, the tax relief is not as generous as he would have liked, but Youngkin is under considerable pressure from his own fellow Republicans not to tamper too much with this budget and to avoid a lot of the gratuitous partisan swipes that he, the governor, took when he vetoed 24 Democratic bills that had been passed with broad bipartisan support. So what we're going to be seeing here is also a governor maybe telegraphing a measure of growth as a politician. Remember, those vetoes did nothing to help him with the minority party.
Well, we'll have to see as the rest of the month plays out. That's all the time that we've got for this week. My name is Michael Pope, and we've been joined by Jeff Schapiro of the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Talk to you next week.
Have a great weekend.